We spent a couple of weeks ago talking about the wife and the responsibility that God has called her to. But as I turn to what He's called us to, I'll make it real simple for you. You love her the same way Jesus loves you, and you'll be a great husband. Love her the same way Jesus loves you. I'll be in confessional, a bit confessional here. Marriage is the hardest thing I've ever done. There are a lot of guys that have built great businesses in here and you have great careers. Hey, that's easy compared to marriage. Being a father and a husband is the hardest thing ever. And there's one of the reasons for that is because the enemy is really against it. And it wouldn't surprise me, even on the way to church, you got in a fight today. I can tell you back in the day when I didn't have a Saturday night service, Rachel and I, our worst arguments were on Saturday night. I don't think that was coincidental. I think the enemy knew I'd be standing on Sunday and he wanted me to feel that I was guilty and had no right to stand and proclaim the gospel or the truth of God's word. How many of you on the way to church, you've been in a fight before on the way to church? Raise your hand. Wow. Now, those of you that didn't raise your hand, you're not going to church enough. You need to go. Because it's going to happen, right? And sometimes we think it's so complicated as men, you know, we're like, man, I don't understand. How do I do this? Love them like Jesus. That's all He says. It's just you love them the way Jesus loves you. How does Jesus love you? Does Jesus cheat on you? Don't cheat on her. Does Jesus lie to you? Don't lie to her. Is Jesus rude to you? Don't be rude to her. Does Jesus embarrass you? Don't embarrass her. It's real simple. So with the Bible open, and ladies, you're going to need to get that listening guide and fill in every blank. Because your husband may not. And I want to make sure you get it. Because it's important you hear what Rachel wrote for me this week. So make sure you've got it there. Okay, I want to back up and let's get a running start. There's a challenge to all of us, no matter husband or not, and that is to submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. So we're to submit to one another, period. And that's just to honor the role that God has given somebody in our life. I think submission is serving. In other words, the way you submit is you serve, you humbly serve. And so what is the call on the wife? The wife is submit, and what does that look like in the marriage? Respect. She respects the role her husband plays in her life. And so that, by the way, guys, as you know, is our deepest need. And ladies, that is what he needs from you, and that's what submission and serving looks like for you. Now, for us, as the husband, what does it look like? For us, we serve by loving our wife unconditionally. Just like Jesus loves us. Loving unconditionally. Now, you know, Jesus never told anybody, I love you. You won't find that in the scripture. But there's hardly a person in here that would say, my goodness, did he really love everybody? Well, sure he did. But he didn't go around saying it. Why? He did it. And the way he did it is a good clue for us as husbands on how we do it. I'm not saying your wife doesn't need to hear the words, I love you, but I can promise you she needs to see those words. And what Jesus did to demonstrate it in a powerful moment was the night when he was with the disciples, the night before he died. They've had the Lord's Supper, John chapter 13, the reference is in your listening guide. You remember what he did? All of a sudden he got up, he took a towel and a basin, and he began to wash their feet. Now these disciples, these guys, even one of them was Judas, who was of the devil. Judas wasn't even a follower. Though he had been with Jesus, he was still not convinced, and Jesus washed his feet. When he got to Peter, remember what Peter said? No, you're not washing my feet. And then Jesus said, well, then I have nothing to do with you, Peter, and you have nothing to do with me. And then Peter said, then wash all of me. To which Jesus said, you don't need a bath, Peter. This is not about that. And then after he washes his feet, he says, go and do the same for one another. Now, some of you might have grown up. In fact, any of you grew up in a tradition where foot washing was a part of one of the ordinances of the church? Any of you? It's very common in some places. It's not been in my practice an ordinance, but I love it. I do it often in terms of leading couples or leading groups in that. It's one of the most powerful things. Guys, let me encourage you to do something. Wash your wife's feet. I know it's just an analogy. I know it's a picture. But you can't believe what the powerful picture, how it moves her and it moves you in that moment. So I'm going to give you a little assignment. There's a thing called the Great Date Night. In fact, I've got a packet I want to show you. These are available back in the back. This is not just for young couples. This is for all of us. And by the way, I hope you never quit dating. I hope you never quit dating. Some of you have been married 30, 40 years, maybe 50, I don't know. Don't ever quit dating. Why is it that before we marry, when we're dating, man, before we go out on a date, we wash the car, we vacuum the car, we wax the car, we get everything looking so... I used to change the oil. I don't know why. I have no idea. She gonna look under the hood? Oh, that looks great. Yeah, I'm impressed. I'm madly in love with you because it looks great. No, but I used to do that because I wanted everything to be just right. Guys, why does that have to change? She's of more value to you now than she was when you were dating. So don't sit there today and say, oh man, I'm past that dating thing. I pray you're never past the dating thing. And that you still want to woo her hard and you want to show her how much she means. So there's a thing called the Great Date Night. And I encourage you, you can pick up the packet. There are 2 assignments in here. On the night you pick to go on the date, there are 2 things I want you to do. Husbands, I want you to wash your feet. But let me give you a little encouragement. Warn her. Warn her, okay? I'm serious, warn her. It's really important because it can be a little overwhelming. All right, just make sure she knows it's coming. The second thing is, on that night, clear a little spot out in the bedroom, clear a little spot out in the den, the family room, wherever, and put on your favorite song, and I want you to slow dance with her. And I want you to show her what a marriage should look like as the husband leads and the wife follows, but they move together. We were in Brazil, and Rachel and I were waiting on the meal that was to be served, and this place we were staying had, I don't know, it was some song. It was a love song, in English. And I just looked at her and said, may I have this dance? And we stood up and just out there, kind of out on the patio by the pool, we danced a little while, and it reminded me again what an incredible blessing that is. And while we're dancing, I look up and one of the Brazilians working at the place, she was doing this. She was applauding. Not my dancing. I think it was just the thought, you know. And I want to promise you, the Father applauds when you and your wife understand the roles that God has given you. Husbands, love her. Serve her. The date night is just a way to help you practically to do that. So when both of you get this, when both the wife and the husband do what God has called us to do, then marriage works. Now, on the way, it gets tough. Notice the next point. You got to get this. The goal of marriage is not happiness, but it's serving and growing together in godliness. When couples come in and I say, what seems to be the problem in your marriage? We're not happy. I always say, so what? What's the problem? We're not happy. That's not a problem. That's life. The goal of marriage is not happiness. You never find that in Scripture. There's not one place where God said He's going to bring another human being into your life so you can be happy. A human being can't bring happiness. Only God can bring that in your life. The goal of marriage, the biblical picture of marriage is this. It's when God puts 2 imperfect individuals together in a one-flesh relationship that over time and through trials results in both becoming more like Jesus. I have a warped board theory of marriage. Some of you have heard it. Every board is warped. You don't realize it. We're all warped. In fact, look at the person on your right and tell them, you're warped. I don't know who it is. Just tell them, you're warped. All of us are warped. Every one of us. When God brings us together in marriage, He takes 2 warped boards and the stress and the pressure of marriage, it straightens both of us out. You see, God uses your spouse to help you become more like Jesus. Today, I'm a lot more like Christ than I was the day I married my wife. And God has used her. It's not always fun. That's why when you're going through a struggle, it's like sandpaper. God's just sanding off a rough edge. He's just helping you to get where He wants you to get. And He uses marriage to get us there. So the goal of marriage, godliness, serving one another, God bringing us together so that we become more like Christ. Now let's turn specifically to the husband. What is our part in that? As difficult as it is and as challenging, it's really pretty simple. He says in verse 25, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave Himself up for her. So the command, and by the way, that verb, love, is a command, guys. It is a form of the word agape, which is the divine form of love. There are 3 words for love, you know this. And agape is the highest form of love. That's the love He calls us to. And it's a command. It's the only command. The word submit for the wives is not a command. In fact, it's not even there in verse 22. It comes from verse 21. But when he gets to the husbands, there is a command. Husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church. So love her as Jesus loves you. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, follow Christ's example of His loving leadership for us. He is your example. Follow Him. Follow Him. Number 1, it starts with you. Husband, as the leader, it starts with you. What did Jesus do? If He's our example, what did He do? He came to us. When He was in heaven and sin was rampant on the earth, did Jesus just go, well, I'm just waiting on you. Get your act together, get your life straight, then I'll love you, then I'll come and die for you. No. The Bible says while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. That's how God demonstrated His love for us. In other words, husbands, don't wait for your wife. You are the leader. It starts with you. In fact, I believe marriage is not finding the right person, it's being the right person. It starts with you saying, you know what, I'm going to do this, no matter what she does, because Jesus didn't wait on me, and He doesn't love me only when I got my stuff together, so I'm not going to wait on her to get her stuff together. I'm going to love her as Christ loved me. That's where you start. The second thing, protect her. Lovingly leading her means you're going to protect her. It means you're going to be the head. Remember the word head in the verses to the wife? It means that you are to be what Jesus is for us, a protector, a warrior. Now, I told you that word head, I think, really means protect. It means like knight in shining armor. It means somebody who's going to come to the rescue, somebody who's going to fight for you, somebody who's going to be there to protect you. I think it's the desire of every girl, every woman, and it's the call of God on our life as guys to be that. Because here's my fear. If you don't lead her that way and protect her, Satan will. I promise you. If you want to know how he works, go back to how it began. In Genesis chapter 3, there in the garden, you've got Adam and Eve. Everything's perfect. Everything is perfect. God has given him a wife. I mean, everything is working great. And then all of a sudden, the serpent comes along. And God had told them you could eat of anything in this garden. You can have anything you want, except there's one tree. And you can't eat of that fruit. It's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And look what Satan does. He comes and he begins to tempt her. Now, most guys think that Eve was out walking by herself. Adam was back watching ESPN. She was out walking by herself. And she ran into a serpent. And the serpent tempted her, and she took the fruit and ate and runs back home and says, Adam, look, it's great. Take a bite. That is not at all how it happened. And I put in your listening guide the verses that apply to the very moment it happened. Look at those. So when the woman saw the tree was good for food and that it was a delight to the eyes and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. And she also gave some to her husband who was, say it, with her. You got to be kidding me. Adam is standing right there. What was he doing? Nothing. That's the problem. He stood right there and watched it all happen. Where was the warrior? Where was the protector? Where was the knight in shining armor to save the day and go, honey, I know it looks appealing, but I remember what God said, and I just don't want that to happen to you or to us. No, he wasn't there. Guys, get up off the couch and be a leader for your wife. Be a protector. Be a warrior. And God has charged us to protect our homes and to guard our homes and to watch out for the enemy. I mean, it just amazes me that Adam didn't open his mouth. And I just think that passive approach to being a husband is killing us, because it's opening up the home and our marriages to what's happening as far as the enemy coming against us. I saw a card or read about a Valentine card that said, if you have something and you let it go and it doesn't come back, it never was yours. If you have something and let it go and it comes back, it really was always yours. If you have something and let it go and it just sits there watching TV, you married it. I don't want to be that guy. Now, I love ESPN and I love my sports. But guys, I beg you, in the name of Jesus, if you don't lead her, Satan will. And that's where it all started. I don't blame Eve. I blame a husband that didn't protect his wife. Lovingly lead. Okay, what does that look like? First of all, lead her with sacrificial love. Lead her with sacrificial love. Go back to verse 25. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. I want you husbands to underline, gave himself. If we're going to take the example of Jesus, here's a clue. She doesn't need something from you. She needs you. Does that make sense? Jesus gave himself up. He didn't send us something. He gave himself. So as a husband loving our wife, we give ourselves, guys. And you know what I hear from men a lot? Oh my goodness, I'm working, I'm providing a home. I'm giving my wife this incredible home. She's got a great car. She's got a closet full of clothes. She gets jewelry. Guys, give her yourself. Jesus didn't send stuff. He gave himself. I had a wife tell me one day, she looked at me and said, David, I'd live in a pup tent in the middle of the forest if I could have my husband. And she lived in a huge home and drove a very nice car. But her cry was, I don't want stuff from him. I want him. But for us guys, that's our fix. We just give them stuff. We give our kids stuff. They don't want your stuff. They want you. I wish it was we could just give them stuff and that worked and everything was fine. That's not what Jesus did. One of my favorite clips out of Everybody Loves Raymond is when Raymond thought the way to fix his wife during that time of the month was a simple pill. They don't need a pill. They need you. Love them sacrificially means I will give you myself, just like Jesus gave himself up. Secondly, lead them with sanctifying love. Sanctifying love. This is the one that amazes me. Back to the text. Now, look with me, if you will, at verse 26. That he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with a word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. Now, what does it mean to love her with a sanctifying love? It doesn't mean, guys, you can sanctify her. That's only a work of Jesus. It is only the blood of Christ that can sanctify. But look at what the word sanctify means. It means set apart. It means to grow someone into holiness and godliness. So the way I take it, if that's a call for us as husbands, while we cannot sanctify her as Christ did, we can love her in such a way that she becomes all that God wants her to be. In other words, we encourage that. We don't hinder the work of God in our wife. We encourage it because we know that God is growing her just like he's growing us. She belongs to him. I love what Perry Noble wrote. Before she was your wife, she was God's daughter, and I would say still is God's daughter, and is very concerned. He's very concerned about how someone treats his girl. In fact, if you want to know how special that relationship is, 1 Peter 3:7 tells husbands, live with your wives in a considerate way so that your prayers are not hindered. Let me just throw this out for you guys. You can come to church as much as you want, and you can pray and use Jesus' name and all the little phrases and formulas you hear. But until you live with your wife in a way that is godly and honoring, your prayers are hindered. Because he takes seriously the way someone treats his daughter. Why? Because she's his. So to love her with a sanctifying love means I recognize that. And I treat her as God's gift to me. You see the connection? To set apart, sanctify means to set apart, to cut something out. That's what he did for all of us as the church. He set us apart for himself. In the same way he did that for your wife. I think he set Rachel apart for me. I mean, she prayed in the 8th grade and even before for her future mate. And we did the same with our children. I think God set her apart for me. And so in that sense, it's like sanctification. Just as it relates to relationship, I must receive her as God's gift to me. Have you ever wondered why God, in the very beginning, didn't go ahead and create woman? You know, he created everything that is, and then obviously man is a part of this, and he says to man, go name everything. Man goes and names everything. And then the Bible says there was something that wasn't good. What was it? It was that man was alone. So then God created woman, took the rib, and did the whole thing. What do you think God knew Adam was going to be alone? Do you think God saw that one coming? Sure he did. So then why didn't God just do it at the beginning so that Adam wouldn't be in need? Here's what I believe. God wanted Adam to need a wife before he gave him a wife. I have a question for the men in the room. Husbands, do you really need your wife? And I know the first answer, of course I do. Does she know that? Because I can tell you a lot of wives tell me, if I weren't in this marriage, my husband would go right on without me just like, no problem. Husbands, do you tell her you need her? Do you receive her as God's special gift that he has set apart for you? Let me give you a great practical example. When I was in Louisiana, long before I came here, I was coaching our kids basketball, and one of the boys, their team was going to practice one afternoon, and I had this guy come see me, and he brought me this ball. And I thought, man, that's cool, because he knew how much I love basketball. And he gave me this ball, special gift, and he was talking, and I guess I wasn't really listening like I should have been in that moment, because I was thinking about, I'm going to use that ball in practice. That's great, man. We needed a new ball. This is perfect. So I changed clothes in my office. We had a gym right downstairs from where I was. Went downstairs to the gym, and the boys were out there. Said, hey, boys, I got a new ball, man. I bounced it out there, and they're shooting layups. And then a kid goes, hey, somebody wrote on this ball. I said, really, what is it? David, I think this is Shaquille. I think Shaq signed this. I said, what? Are you serious? Let me see it. And I looked at it. Shaq. Number 34. I said, give me that ball. What are y'all doing playing with that ball out here, bouncing that ball around? Get your hands off the... I mean, I didn't do it that way, but I'm like, no, you're not about to practice with this ball. Man, this thing's been signed by somebody. And I was a huge fan, still am, of Shaq. You know, he played at LSU and on. But anyway, I was a huge fan. I'm like, don't mess with that. It was as if the Lord said to me, David, your wife has an autograph on her too. I signed. She's a gift. Don't throw her around if you don't want this to be thrown around. In other words, why would you treat a basketball better? Just because it has somebody's signature on it. The same way you would treat your wife different than everybody else in your life. Why is it that we're kind and gracious on the phone to others? Why are we kind and gracious to the ladies at the office? Why are we kind and gracious and then we come home and we treat our wife worse than all the others? She is a gift. She has God's name written on her for you. So to sanctify her, and that love means you receive her as a gift. It means you encourage what God is doing. And it also means you never give up on her. That's what sanctification is. It's a process. It's going through the growth, and it's overcoming. Look what Jesus said. He's cleaning up his bride. He says, I'm going to present my bride to myself, and in the text, himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. See, right now, he's working on all of us to clean us up. So when a husband loves his wife with sanctifying love, he believes the best, and he knows that she's getting the work of God in her. So you don't give up. You don't quit. When she messes up, you don't quit loving her, because Jesus didn't quit loving you. When she comes with blemishes, when she comes with issues, you don't give up. You don't quit. Why? Because he didn't quit on you. That's sanctifying love. It means you hang in there for the long haul, because you know one day she is going to be made perfect just like you. I was in a counseling session one day, and I don't normally have, thanks, Cyrus. I don't normally have this happen, but I was sitting there, and this guy, this girl, his wife, they had 3 children. She was weeping. And this is what she said. David, I grew up in a home where I was abused as a little girl. I was abused by my father. I was abused by my uncle. And she said, it just messed me up. She said, I had an eating disorder when I was a teenager, still struggle with it from time to time. And she said, I just have all these issues, and it's hard for me to get past them in my marriage. And I want him to understand that. Well, when she said that, he gets up. And like this chair, let's just say she was sitting in this chair, because I had them sitting side by side, and I was over here behind a desk. He gets up and he stands right over her, and he said, I am so sick and tired of having to suffer because of the stuff you went through as a girl. And then he just went off. And I'm telling you, something happened, something snapped in me. I got up from behind my desk, and I walked over, and I turned my body with her sitting here, and I stood right in his face. He was about this tall. I loved it. He was about that tall, and he's just staring right here. And I said, sir, sit down. And he said, I just don't think it's fair that, sit down. I don't want you to ever talk to your wife that way again. Let me ask you a question. You got any stuff in your life? Why did Jesus have to die for your stuff? Don't you think that's unfair? What Jesus did for you on the cross was not for his sin, it was for yours. And so you have no right as a husband to hold over her the mistakes of her past or what has been done to her any more than Jesus would have a right to look at you and tell you to go to hell and you got to go. I said, I don't want to ever hear you talk to your wife that way again. Sit down. He sat down. I mean, his eyes were about that big. I'm like, I guess he thought I was just going to sit there and listen to him. But it just brought everything in me to the point of saying, guys, that's the way Jesus treated us. We don't have a right to look at our wife and say, you're messed up here and you got this wrong and you got that wrong. So do we. Sanctifying love means we don't give up. It means God's working on her and God is changing her, and we're going to stay in it because he's changing us too. That's sanctifying love. The last thing, leader with nourishing love. Nourishing love. Go to the next verse where he talks about loving your wife as if you're loving yourself. And then he gives these 2 little words that are amazing to me. I'm reading from verse 28. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself, for no one has ever hated his own flesh, but he nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ of the church, because we are members of his body. Therefore, a man leaves his mother and father, holds fast to his wife, the 2 become one flesh. This mystery is profound, and I'm saying it refers to Christ and the church. However, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. What does it mean to nourish and cherish her as you do your own flesh? Those are 2 words straight out of the animal kingdom. It means to meet her needs, guys. First, you meet her needs. That's how you nourish her. These two phrases come out of the animal kingdom. They're used for a bird, a mother bird, who feeds her little ones, who takes care of her little ones. In the same way, a husband should meet the need of his wife and nourish her, take care of her. I got a question, guys. Do you know your wife's needs? Do you know what it is she needs? I can tell you two needs that if she's like most women she has. Number one, affection. It's a need that women have to be affirmed and someone to be affectionate. Now, that's can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but that's a great question to ask on a date night. Hey, is there something I can do better? And the other thing that most women need is communication. She needs to talk. And I don't think guys, we don't realize this. Dobson told us a long time ago that women on average speak 25,000 words a day. That's it, 25,000 words a day. You know what guys speak? About 12,000. And here's the problem. Guys, if you've been at work, you've already used up your 12,000 before you get home. And if your wife works at home and she's with the children, guess what? She hadn't used an adult word. She hadn't used 12. So when you walk in, she's got 24,900 and something words. She's ready to go. But you look at her and go, man, I just don't feel like talking. Well, that's not what she hears. What she hears is, I'm not interested in your day. I'm not interested in hearing how you feel. I'm not interested in talking to you at all because I've used up my 12,000 words. I ain't got anything else to say. They need communication. And you know what? What you say matters, but what matters even more is how you say it. So the question is, if you're going to nourish her, meet her needs. Ask her what her needs are. The second thing, remember, she's one with you. So the way you love her is like yourself. Would you do that to yourself? No, well then don't do it to her. And that's where he quotes Genesis 2:24 for the two. The husband leaves his father and mother, he cleaves into his wife, and the two become one flesh. One flesh. That one flesh thing is not just having sex. You know, old school and back in the day, you know, the consummate the marriage was to have sex, and that meant you were one flesh. Let me tell you something. There are couples having sex all day long that aren't one flesh. One flesh is not about sex. It's about dreaming together, praying together, walking together, living life together, sharing everything together. It's so much more than a physical act. Remember, she's your body. Bone of your bone, flesh of your flesh. Remember, where did God make her from? Right here. Husband, your wife has your rib. Go get it. Love her and love your rib. Little boy heard that wives came from the rib. He went home with a pain in his side. His mom asked what was wrong. He said, I think I'm having a wife. Well, maybe you ought to have a wife. Maybe that's the pain. Cherish her, nourish her. She's yours. She's one with you. And then the last thing. Notice it says, and the two shall become one flesh. Never stop growing in love. Never stop becoming one flesh. No matter how long you live, may you always grow together. Let me tell you, today I'm a lot more one with Rachel than the day we married. The day we married, I thought I knew her. I didn't know her. And you know what? There's even more to know about her and to love about her. And I look forward to the days that God gives us. Don't ever quit growing in love and becoming one together. That's God's plan. And you know, my favorite coach of all time, football, basketball, doesn't matter, John Wooden. John Wooden, you remember, loved his wife Nellie, and she died in 1985. And from 1985 until John Wooden died in 2010, you know what he would do on the 21st of every month? He would write a love letter to his wife, Nellie. She was already gone. But it didn't stop him because he wanted to communicate his love. He'd write a love letter. He would pile them on her pillow. She died in 85. He died in 2010. 25 years of writing those love letters because he loved her so much. Don't ever stop. Don't ever stop growing together in one flesh. Robertson McQuilkin was professor at Columbia Bible. In fact, he became president of Columbia Bible College. He was a student there when he was young, and he met his wife there, Muriel. And in the late 80s, early 90s, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And all of a sudden, he was faced in the early 90s with a decision. She needs me at home because the Alzheimer's was progressing, but the university needs me, the Bible college needs me. And so he had to make a decision. Do I go home to be with her? Or do I continue as the president of this institution? And I want you to hear what he decided. He gave this address to the students, and he said to them, I'm going home. And you know what? He got 10 more years with his bride. 10 more years that he got to be by her side. And what Robertson McQuilkin says is, hey, she's flesh of my flesh, bone of my bone. It was the greatest honor to spend those days by her side. Listen to what he actually said. This is a transcript. And the audible voice of Robertson McQuilkin the day he announced to the students he was going home. Watch.
I haven't in my life experienced easy decision making on major decisions, but one of the simplest and clearest decisions I've had to make is this one, because circumstances dictated it. Muriel, now, in the last couple of months, seems to be almost happy when with me, and almost never happy when not with me. In fact, she seems to feel trapped, becomes very fearful, sometimes almost terror. And when she can't get to me, there can be anger. She's in distress. But when I'm with her, she's happy and contented. And so I must be with her at all times. And you see, it's not only that I promised in sickness and in health, till death do us part. And I'm a man of my word. But as I have said, I don't know with this group, but I've said publicly, it's the only fair thing. She sacrificed for me for 40 years to make my life possible. So, if I cared for her for 40 years, I'd still be in debt. However, there's much more. It's not that I have to, it's that I get to. I love her very dearly, and you can tell it's not easy to talk about. She's a delight. It's a great honor to care for such a wonderful person.
So ladies, when your husband loves this way, it's a lot easier to respect, isn't it? And you see how God just put it together in such a beautiful way that it works. One of my favorite kings was Cyrus the Great, the Persian king who let the people of Israel go back home after the years in Babylon. Cyrus defeated the Babylonians. He told the Jews, go home, go back to Jerusalem, rebuild. Nehemiah went back, built the walls. Zerubbabel built the temple. Ezra took the law back. Cyrus had a general whose wife committed a treasonous act. And they brought her before the king, and as he listened to what happened, he said, the only thing I can do is sentence you to death. Her husband was outside the chambers of the king, heard what the king said, and against all protocol, he runs into the presence of the king, and he falls at the feet of King Cyrus. And this is what he said, King, can I take her place? Would you kill me? Not her. Let me die. And Cyrus the Great looked at them and said, a love like this should not be parted with death. You're free to go. And they get up And they're walking out and they're rejoicing. And he looks at his wife and he says, did you see the way the king looked at us? And she said, no. My eyes were not on the king. They were on the man who was willing to die for me. Guys, if you want her to respect you, if you want her to look up to you, you love her as Christ loves you. And God will do it.